All right, so it is 11 o'clock in the New York time zone, and we have our third webinar today, and this time with a very interesting company that makes, the name of the company is Batar, and they make a very unique product that most of us never think about, yet at the same time all of us use it. So they make water meters, they make gas meters, and electricity meters, and most people don't even know where those devices come from. We just have them in our houses, but essentially we are all consumers or users of that kind of product. And so today we have a company from Russia named Batar that makes those products. They do extremely well in their own market, so in Russia and some neighboring countries, but they are capable of ramping up the production and selling the products to more countries. And so that's why they're seeking help of X-Culture with developing the market expansion strategy. And today here we have two people. We have Anna Sverina, who is a professor at the Kazan State University, a university that has participated in X-Culture many, many times, at least for several years now, 4 or 5 years, something like that. And so we also work on a number of studies together. And then we also have the director of the sales department of the company, and I will let Anna do the introduction. But before we get into the introductions, I would like to briefly summarize how we're going to do the session today. So we will start with a little introduction of the company, the products, the history, where they operate. And then I already have quite a few questions that have been sent to me by email. So all of you watching, if you have any questions, again, just send me an email to admin@xculture.org. Or you can click on the presenter link and just simply join us here right in the room, and you can ask your questions and engage in a discussion and talk directly to the representatives of the company. So Anna, would you please do the introduction of our guest, and we will start with the company.
Okay, our guest today is Tagir Ibragimov. He's, as it was already said, the head of the sales department, and he's mostly in a lot of times dealing with experts from the company. I will be doing most of the talking probably. So the company was established in 1996. It's a relatively old company for Russia. It was the first one which started producing metering equipment. It was established on the basis of former Vostok watch plant. Some of you might have heard about the products of the plant. There's Komandirsky watches, which were very popular in Europe, and still people know the brand. So because the plant was capable of producing accurate equipment, they started producing meters. By this time, Russia was completely unprepared as a market, so people didn't really understand why they need any type of meters in their households, because in Soviet times, all the energy was extremely cheap. And so they were just getting used that you can save something when you install metering equipment. And so now the company has celebrated their 20th anniversary. Yeah. And proudly says that how many meters you have produced? 65 million?
Million.
Okay. Million. 65 million meters, yeah.
Wow, that's
cool. The company occupies, on the Russian market, it occupies over the half. So we can probably say that in 7 flats in Russia out of 10, they have a Batar meter installed, especially the water meters. And the company actually produced the whole scale, so all types of water meters, both households and industry, electric meters, heat meters, and gas meters. And the main product is still water meters and gas meters. So that
is it something that you put on the, like, how is it different from the water or electric meter? So what exactly is the heat meter?
A heat meter, you put it on the heating system to count calories that are used to heat the house. As we are cold, it's important, and the heat is getting very expensive lately.
Yeah, I don't think we have them here, so we have the water, electricity, and gas, but we don't have, okay, that's good to know.
Well, that's something. So the company is represented in Russia in 69 regions. They are selling now to the following countries. It's Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. And if we start with the history, One of the co-founders of Bitar in 1996 was from Belarus. So the company was really early to internationalize. They entered Belarus market in 1997. But now it's like fully Russian companies. Then the next market that was entered was Kazakhstan, then Mongolia, and then Turkmenistan, and so Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. It doesn't mean that they don't sell to the other countries, but those countries have like sales dealers or distributors in the countries. There were a lot of questions about competitors. The main competitors we have here in the Russian market are Accurate Equipment Building Plant and Norma, which is based in St. Petersburg, and Gerida, which is based in Krasnodar. But those two, the latter, Norma and Gerida, they are actually Chinese meters, which are sort of part of the production, but a very small part is in Russia, but they are considered to be Russian meters. The company has all the certificates possible, I guess. The six different type of ISO certificates, which the company already holds. Though the interesting part, probably the very interesting part that the company considers as strengths, the whole production line is being done in the company itself. So what is more common for the foreign companies, that they buy different parts, and the company producing meters is just making the final product. This is not the case with Bitar. They are doing everything from the very beginning by themselves. All the parts of the meters are also produced within the company.
So what is the reason for that? Is that to control the quality, or because everybody these days seems to be buying components and just doing the assembly? So for you, the reason for that is it cheaper? Is it higher quality that way? Why do you make all the components?
Well, the first reason was the quality, to control the quality. The second reason, which was already, we discussed it with Tagir just before the webinar, it offers fantastic level of adaptivity. So if someone comes and says they need, let's say, 100,000 water meters, it can be produced in 4 days within the company. So if you use the supply chain, it's normally not possible.
It will take time. So it's cheaper, faster, and more control over the quality. Makes sense. Okay. Yep.
And the other important, very important strengths of the company is for Russia, a large distribution network. So we have in Russia, I think now 83 regions, and 69 regions have official representations from Bitar. So basically, every other company that came to the market was following Bitar footsteps. And we even discussed that some of them were positioning themselves like, we are a daughter company from Bitar. And that's why we have the quality, so you can buy from us. And there were even some situations when other producers were coming saying, well, the people who bought actually meters, they were saying, well, we bought some from Gerida, which is in Krasnodar, but we have some problems with the quality. Should we send them back on warranty to Gerida, to you, to Bitar? And Bitar says, well, what does it have to do with us? It's a different producer. And say, oh, really? They say this is a daughter company. That's,
If you had to name some of the weaknesses of your company, so we understand how it is better than the competition, are there things that you would consider to be a weakness?
The main weakness in terms of Russian market is
I think we lost the feed. If you can hear me, can you please repeat? The picture is. Let's give it a second. If you can hear me and see me, so it seems like we lost the connection for a second here.
Okay.
Anna, it seems like we lost the connection with you, so Okay, we are back online. All right, so the weaknesses. Once you started answering the question, we lost the connection. So yes, please, could you repeat that?
So in Russian markets, the main weakness is the price. So it's relatively expensive compared to those Russian-based Chinese companies. And this is, well, actually the basic weakness that is present. In terms of, let's say, European competitors, we discussed quite a while. So Tagir named Sensus, Maddalena from Italy, Bimeters from Germany, Hydrometer, Povagas from Poland, Itron from France, Chemstrap, Zenner from Germany. So just a number of those. Those are more expensive, but their brand names are better known in their markets, and well, we can discuss about the quality here, which one is better or not. So the branding can be considered.
So in terms of the standards, is this the kind of the product that can be sold anywhere, or each country has its own standards as to how the water, gas, heat, electricity are metered? Like, for example, looking at the United States market, I assume the water would be metered in gallons, not in liters, which is right away potentially a challenge. But then electricity, it's still kilowatts, so I assume that that would be the same. So is that something that is transferable to any market, or there are some restrictions as to where the products can be used?
This is a restriction because actually this is the main reason why the main markets where Betar is present, besides Russia, are the markets where the technical conditions are exactly the same as in Russia, because those are former USSR countries and United States.
Mm-hmm.
But when we go somewhere abroad, there can be differences. Like you mentioned, if it's an Anglo-Saxon system, that means water is measured in gallons. So the meters that are produced at Betar are not, it's not possible to install them. And I think there were a couple of stories when everything seemed to fit, but one small part was not fitting to the system. So before
millimeters versus inches in terms of the diameter of the pipe or something like that.
Yes, this can be different. This is fixable, but it takes time. So before entering any other international market, it has to be checked whether the meter can be installed as it is, or you need some adoptions to this new market. But again, here we can say that it can be addressed by the strengths, because the whole production is based in the same place, so the changes can be made relatively easy.
Right. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Now, so who are your customers then? As I understand, you probably don't sell to the individual buyers, right? It probably you deal with other businesses, or how does it work? What is your distribution channel essentially?
Nowadays, mostly it's like B2B sales. So Betar is a producer, and there are trade representatives, whatever you call those, and they sell to the final households. But again, the problem of the company is that it's both in B2B and B2C markets. So the final product is used by the customer. And so, for example, in Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and so on, except for Turkmenistan, I think, it is the final consumer who makes the decision what kind of meter should be installed in his or her household. So you have to meet the requirements from each household, and at the same time you need to check with the dealer on and negotiate different shipment issues and other payment issues. Should it be prepayment, post-payment, or whatever? So this is all negotiable, but they don't sell to the final household. So I can go to a store and buy a Betar meter, but I can't come to Betar and say, please sell me 1 meter. They'll just not be doing this. And I didn't mention this. There's also very interesting offer by the company, which is not done by anyone else in Russia. They offer trade-in program for water meters.
Oh.
So when it expires, you have to change it. In all the other cases, you just throw your old meter away. But in case with Betar, you can sell it back to the company for and get a new one for a lower price.
That's interesting, yeah. So what happens to the old one then? Do you recycle it, or do you use some of the parts again and then refurbish it, or?
Сторонние производители используют либо бутыль, либо переработку, либо металл. Пластик, естественно, полностью утилизируется. А сторонние счетчики нашего производства, если в качестве более нормального вторичное использование, если нет, то, конечно, могут появиться.
Okay, so some components are just thrown away. Some are utilized. If some like metal components can be reused, plastic is fully utilized. But if the meter is in good condition, it can be looked at what can be used and what cannot be used. So it's not fully thrown away. It's usable.
Makes perfect sense. Now, how do you promote your products at this time? What is your basically marketing strategy and promotion channels at this time?
So there are like now they use three main promotion channels. The first one is advertisement on the internet. So the company has a website, and it's being advertised on the internet in different ways. They also go to special journals, special media, where the meters are advertised, but this is for some specific clients who actually read this stuff. And exhibitions, of course. But in terms of internal market, for example, exhibitions are more or less now an image project, because almost everyone knows Bitar, and so they just go to say, yes, we are still here, we are still big, we are still produce good quality. But on international markets, I think you have a lot of exhibitions.
Yeah.
And so, so when it comes, yes, to international markets, what would be the viable ways to promote the product? I mean, obviously the exhibitions and trade fairs, but then if the students wanted to help you with entering the market, so should they try to talk to, what would it be, retailers like hardware stores, or would it be big building companies or utilities? What would be kind of the right people to approach, and then what would be the right way to approach them? So any ideas here, any suggestions?
Let me answer part of the question, and then we'll check with the other part. No, it depends on the market. So if it's a final consumer who makes a decision, then it's probably, besides the trade shows and exhibitions, it should be some companies that sell similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can do multi-branding here and just offer an additional brand from Bitar and let the customer choose. In case, like in Turkmenistan, where energy companies install meters as well as households themselves, then it will be reasonable to approach energy suppliers and offer
utilities,
offer them, yes. And so about the other, let me just check.
Like maybe construction companies.
Да, то есть, например, рекламу, например.
Нет, в иностранных пробовали, мы пробовали, что снимали рекламные ролики, да, в России, фильмы наши, на, как правило, на федеральный канал, конечно, мы не замахивались, но на местном телевидении, то есть региональном. У нас в Татарстане Новый век, Челябинское время какое-нибудь, такие вот местные каналы, да, мы делали специальные нарезки, отправляли их дилерам, а их.
The other channel that was used, the company made films, movies on the production process and on the product itself. It was, of course, it was made up here, but it was used in new markets, mainly regional ones, but it can be translated and transferred abroad. They never actually used federal TV channels, like there are two major in Russia. Like it's not working actually in this case. But the local channels or regional channels, like we have here, Tatarstan television, in the region, or Chelyabinsk Oblast television, whatever. On this channel, yes, they try to use some TV advertisement as well, so this can be.
And now you mentioned that you have some local sales representatives. Can you talk a little bit more about that? So who are those people? Are those only sales agents, or are those bigger distributors? How does it work?
There are different types because it depends on the market, it depends on the volume of shipment. In many cases, it's just sales agents, so they sell some specific volume and they get a bonus for that.
Yeah.
Let's say in Kazakhstan, it's quite a big distributor, and they have different conditions on working as a company. In the regions as well, so 69 regions, they have the distributors, and it actually depends, as I understand, on the population density. So if density is high, it's reasonable to establish some bigger distributor, but if the population density is relatively low, it makes more sense to have an agent there, selling from time to time and then replacing the meters when the time comes.
Right, makes perfect sense. Yes. In terms of the markets, so you mentioned that you sell primarily in Russia and then the former Soviet Union satellites. Are there any specific markets that you are most interested in as new markets?
We discussed that, and the answer was like Middle East, Southeastern Asia, Latin America, South Africa. So it more depends. There are two specific features of the market that company considers. So it has to be a relatively high population density, because the company is oriented mainly on apartment buildings. So you have to have a lot of people living in the same place. Vodka in Russia wouldn't work very good. And the other reason, the level of income has to be a little bit higher than average, because those are people who start counting money, and actually the people who have the money to buy meters.
Yeah, I would also assume that the potentially viable markets would be the ones that are switching from no meter to meter systems. I assume there are many developing countries where they may be used to use no meters, and then the new regulations, the new laws perhaps mandate that everybody has to install them. In fact, my native Ukraine, I remember, not so long ago, they did go through this process of installing the water meters. Like I remember during the Soviet Union times, there were no meters, and then like in the 90s and 2000s, all of a sudden everybody started installing them. And so there was this big demand, big boom for this particular viable market. So, I mean, for this particular product. So I assume a viable market would be one where the country may be transitioning from the new standards and, requiring all business or residents to install meters. And all of a sudden you may have this whole huge wave of demand. And so I'm not sure what those countries might be, but if the students happen to know of any of those transitioning countries, I think that would be potentially a viable market.
Yes, it helps a lot, because normally the sales of the product go step by step. For example, the government decides that, well, everyone needs to install water meters, and then like 5 years pass and they say, okay, everyone needs to install gas meters. And of course it creates higher volume of sales, because if it's not pushed, people, as you mentioned in the very beginning, do not think a lot about that you have to measure something here.
Yeah, unless you have this strange situation. Again, I know in Ukraine that's the case. So if you don't have a water meter, for example, then they bill you for some sort of a estimated, amount of water that you presumably consume, which is, from what I hear, is much, much larger than the actual consumption. And so by installing the meter, even though you're not required to put one, but if you do install it, then you usually pay much less, because then you actually pay for what you used and not for some sort of hypothetical number that the utilities company comes up with. And so in that case, even though it's not required, but everybody tries to get one just so they don't have to pay too much for the utilities.
Exactly, it's absolutely the same in Russia. When I installed meter in my household relatively late, and I started paying 9 times less for the water.
Right, yeah. So it may be expensive to install, but it kind of saves you money in the long run by paying less for the utilities that you consume. Now, we have a lot of questions about the entry modes. So the new markets, From what I hear, sometimes you would sell the products yourself. Sometimes you would have a local distributor. Sometimes you would have retailers. So if, let's say, the students came up with a new market, let's say, for example, Brazil or maybe, I don't know, Portugal. Would you be open to the idea of working with a local partner, maybe like a joint venture or perhaps some sort of like a long-term agreement with the distributor? Or would you prefer to open your own stores? Or would you prefer to hire your own sales representatives? Do you have any preferences, as well as perhaps some restrictions as to, okay, this method will not work, we only will do it this way and this way? So what would be your preferred, I guess, or preferred or necessary entry modes?
Just a sec. То есть если экспортировать, ну, то есть вы предпочитаете производить сами, насколько я понимаю. Не продадите технологии, вы не дадите под вашей маркой производить кому-то непонятно корзину. Все остальное, в принципе, обсуждать. И вы даже это можете обсуждать.
Я сейчас не готов ответить, да. Именно по продаже технологий. Мы можем с каким-то другим брендом. Если такая необходимость, да, мы можем делать, например, если мы для Монголии делаем другой бренд, стандарт.
Okay. So the answer is that entry mode is almost everything. So it can be a joint venture, it can be strategic alliance, it can be just export, it can be almost any time. The only thing that is should be discussed, and we're not ready now to answer this question. If someone comes up with it, it shouldn't be a follow-up. They are not selling, they have never sold the technology itself.
Right.
But they are open to producing meters under other brand. So if it's necessary and it's done, for example, for Mongolia, for Bitar produce meters, but the brand name is different there. So this is possible as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of your pricing strategy, so I assume this is the type of product where the full price is paid at the moment of product transfer. But do you offer some sort of special discounts to the long-term customers, or are you open to some sort of a financing option where the payment is made in smaller installments? How does it work now, and are you open to some of those ideas in the future?
So the price, yes, it's exactly as you described, but the company already has special prices for distributors. It already has bonus system, and bonuses are very, very much adaptive again. That's negotiable, depends on volume, it depends on payment mode, so it can be prepaid, it can be paid directly when products are shipped, it can be paid a little bit afterwards, but it all will influence the pricing strategy. So currently the price of, for example, water meter for cold water, which is a basic product in Russian market, it's $6.6 US.
Oh, that's not expensive at all.
For our market, it's relatively expensive, so you can find cheaper. It just depends. But again, there are a lot of conditions that company is eager to discuss. So really, they are very flexible on working with different markets, with different situations. So if the students are coming up with any sort of different ideas, it can be discussed.
So what are the prices then? Can you give like rough estimated prices for those products? If it's only like $6, $10, that's very cheap. I mean, there is no point of talking about some sort of like financing. I mean, this is an amount of money that most people can just pay, right?
Yes, but when it comes to the distributor, it means that the shipment volume will be bigger. So
right,
maybe
so it's a few thousand of those.
Yes, it comes to thousands of dollars. So if it's really a significant factor, then the company can discuss different types of payments. But for the final customer, yes, it's not really expensive.
Yeah. Now, we have a few questions about the logistics. So how do you currently ship your products? And then are they very sensitive and can be damaged in transit, or they're fairly sturdy and it's not a problem if the box with the product, is dropped and stuff like that? So how sensitive are they to, I don't know, heat and I don't know, shaking and whatever else can happen as they're being shipped? Do they require any special treatment, or you can just use regular shipping methods?
Let me check that.
Ну, упаковка сделана так, что, в принципе, она предохраняет каких-либо воздействий, но, естественно, как бы с высоты его бросать нельзя. Но вот при погрузке даже кто-то так кидает, это нормально. Каждый счетчик упакован в индивидуальную упаковку, потом они по 20 штук в общую упаковку. И слоистый картон, который, ну, предохраняет. И плюс, единственное, что там есть направление, то есть, ну, переворачивать его нежелательно, но это на коротком направлении, как вверх.
Actually, we checked about the types of shipment. So the company used all the types of shipments, of course, besides the pipelines, because it's impossible.
Right.
But even avia sales were, in some cases, were used. And for example, there was a case of Bosnia, a small shipment to Bosnia, when aviation logistics appeared to be the cheapest option of all the ones available, and that's very strange, but it happens sometimes. In terms of what can be done with the product, if no one is throwing them from the second floor, for example, it's okay. So there is an individual box for each meter, and then 20 meters are packed into the other box, and the thing that box is made of is actually prevents from some damage. The only thing that is important, you don't need to turn it upside down, but on the whole boxes it's written by the arrow that where is the bottom, where is the top, and this is actually the only restriction. Anything. So there were shipments by railroads, automobile, maritime, whatever.
Okay, makes perfect sense. Now, finances. So lots of questions about that. So sometimes it is difficult. In fact, in one of the webinars we had today, it's an American company and they sell cosmetics and hair care products. And they said that sometimes they run into the problem that the country where they sell the product, the distributors have no easy way to send money to the United States. So they have to get a permission from the central bank and all kinds of restrictions on how the payments can be made. So when it comes to trading with Russia, so are there any restrictions on paying into Russia? Have you had any problems with receiving money? Are there any fees that you have to pay on the transfers, taxes and things like that? And perhaps, I don't know if you have any specific questions that the students should research and see how they can, perhaps the transfer fees can be minimized or the taxes can be minimized within the legal restrictions on international money transfers.
Мы пока с такими не сталкивались. То есть мы с Европой спокойно работаем. С азиатской страной. В основном, конечно, но были случаи, когда и нам переводили деньги. С Европы нам переводили деньги. Проблем абсолютно никаких не возникало. Что долларовые, что евро переводили. Валютные счета у нас как бы все нормально, да.
So far, the company had never had any problems with transfers. So everyone who was willing to pay was able to pay. The company has accounts both in US dollars and in euro. So it means there always can be an European transition bank that will be able to transfer the money. So if there is any type of particular restriction somehow connected to Russia, it can be, but the products we are talking about, they are not under any type of restrictions right now. So this is perfectly consumer. I can't imagine how you can use this as like
right. Not what we call a dual intent or dual purpose. So it's not a military product or anything like that, right? Yeah.
So there is with this. It was never a problem.
Right. Now, the last and the biggest question, so we included this real-life test of the proposed market strategy. So as every company, so does Batar. So basically you're saying, all right, so once you identify a promising market, once you develop the market entry strategy, why don't you prove to us that this works by literally finding a consumer customer for our client, for our product? And so here the instructions say that the students are encouraged to go and try to talk to potential buyers, either distributors or perhaps big building companies or utilities companies, and then show them the information about the tar products and then see if they can get a contract. And so the big question here is, one, who would be the right people to talk to about that? So what types of companies the student should approach? Second, what exactly should they say to maximize the chance of a contract? And three, at which point should they transfer or refer the customer to you so you can finalize the negotiations? The students, I assume, can initiate the discussion and maybe pique the interest, but once the company says that yes, we're interested, we would like to do to do business with the car, I think that at that time probably they should be talking to you, not to the students. So what would be your tips and recommendations here as to what the students should do in order to maximize the chance of a contract? And by the way, again, for the students, if you succeed at that, you will even receive aftermarket commission from the company for facilitating the contract. So what would be the tips here? How should they approach it?
Okay, the first thing is yes, yes, yes. So ultimate life test is the thing that company really welcomes, and it was confirmed, as Tagir says, by the talk with CEO of the company, who said, yes, we are interested. If there will be some person finding something in a new market, we are really eager to hire this person for the company. So this is the first thing. Whom you can approach. So this can be either meter distributors, so some companies that already sell other meters, let's say. The other type of a client are energy suppliers. And about what to say and when to get back, I'll just check that.
Right.
Спрашивают, что лучше всего сказать там покупателям? То есть вот вы что рассказываете, когда говорите, какие вы хорошие?
Мы, естественно, как бы, здесь в России мы ценой оперировать не можем. Да? То есть в не можем ценой оперировать. То есть мы говорим, если мы компанию вообще в целом, мы говорим, как бы, вкратце, имеет потом именно достижения на данном этапе, даже на российском рынке. Потом говорим список наших продуктов, которые мы обладаем. Говорим о том, что завод обладает, естественно, банковским производством, потому что мы реально контролируем качество нашей продукции, начиная там от прихода материала, у нас есть в этом лаборатория, которая занимается приемом материала, и заканчивая уже выходом продукта в свет. То есть у нас там нет очень много специалистов системы контроля качества. То есть мы это предполагаем. Естественно, гарантия, которую мы даем на весь срок службы нашего предприятия.
So what normally the company does when it enters a new market, as we said, in Russia, the price of the product is not really low. But for example, even in Uzbekistan, the meters are getting cheap ones. So the first thing that is probably something that you should say, the price is low. The second thing, there is a presentation from the company. I think it can be accessible, so they can send it, a normal one, when it tells about it, how long it's in the market, what is produced, the whole range of different types of meters that can be produced. And then they stress out the fact that since the whole production line is in the same place, they have a very multi-step quality control level. So it starts with the raw materials that come to the company. There is a laboratory that controls the raw materials. Then it goes to the next step. Again, the quality is controlled. And all the way up when it comes to final meters. So that's why the company is able to offer warranty for the whole time when the product will be in use. So if it says 6 years, it means that the company will replace it for, even if it gets broken when it's like 5 years and 11 months past, because it's not the final period. So this is, and again, which it can be possibly important, for Russia, because for Russia it's significant. This is one of the first company which installed statistical methods of quality control. They're fully automatized, so it's not done like it used to be done just manually, but there are a lot of systems that analyze deeply the quality of product. So the main thing is like the price is low and you have really the full-time warranty for the high quality product, and we say that and we mean it, that it will work for the whole time being, and so forth. So those main things. And the third part of the question that he asked, когда вот они там с кем-то поговорили, когда им к вам вернуться, сказать, о, классно, покупайте. То есть как только они поговорили или когда там с чем к вам возвращаться. Да, с каким результатом.
Нам любой результат, в принципе, бывает отрицательный, все. Но они имеют в виду...
То есть обратную связь, когда давать туда. У вас отрицательный результат уже выйдет.
Ну, конечно, да.
Okay, the company says that the feedback is important, even if it's a negative feedback.
Right.
So, as soon as there is any offer made by the students to the company, and they have something that was replied, or we are interested, we are not interested, can you give some details? They should contact company directly, and then it's just negotiable. We need to talk about that, what they have and what can be done. So maybe some extra materials would be needed, or some extra consultation, because for a student to sell something that he had never seen.
Yeah, especially when it's such a unique product. Yeah.
Just a sec.
Если кто-то изделие и, например, этот продукт пойдет на стране, и если потом кто-то захочет воспользоваться техникой, которую сделал, да, к нам будут обращаться, мы их будем переуправлять.
Okay, so the way the company usually works, so if someone finds in, let's say, Pakistan, that the company that's interested in buying BTR products, and then after BTR meters are installed in Pakistan, anyone else who approaches BTR and asking for that extra shipment, they will send those new people to the first one who did the first sale, saying this is the person you need to contact. So don't go to us directly, go to this representative.
So what you're saying is, if somebody, let's say a student or a company, shows you that they can sell your products, you will be open to the idea of working with them on a permanent basis and using them as your main kind of distributor representative in the country.
And everybody else who approaches, they will also, so they say, we want to be like open relationship. You do it for us. We will not be looking for the other representative in the country.
Right, makes perfect sense. Wonderful. Okay, well, I think we've gone through all of the questions. I keep receiving emails, but most of the questions are repetitive, so things that were already discussed. And so I see we had a few students watching us live, and the recording will be available for those who couldn't attend it live, so if they had classes at this time or jobs. And so this program will be available for them later on. And I guess we will stop here. The only thing that I will ask, as we discussed, we would like to have another webinar in about 2 months. And at that time, the plan is that you will be primarily listening, and we will select 2-3 student teams that will present to you what they have at that time. And then the question or request will be to provide some feedback, so that whatever they do, they know if they're on the right path. And then if needed, they will then have a few weeks left to make the adjustments, and before they submit the final product to have a product, to have a report that meets your expectations. So, but this one, we're pretty much out of time. So thank you so much. Truly appreciate your time. And I know it's, what, 6 p.m. now, probably in your location? So
almost 7.
7. So I'm sure you have better things to do on a Friday night. So thank you so much for spending the hour with our students. And we will be in touch. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.